Welcome to the Q3 AWS Startup Showcase. I'm Lisa Martin. I'm pleased to welcome Knox Anderson, the VP of Product Management from Sysdig, to the program. Knox, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Excited to uncover Sysdig. Talk to me about what you guys do.
So Sysdig, we are a secure DevOps platform, and we're going to really allow customers to secure the entire lifecycle of an application from source to production. So give you the ability to scan IAC for security best practices, misconfiguration, help you facilitate things like image scanning as part of the build process, and then monitor runtime behavior for compliance or threats, and then finish up with incident response so that you can respond and recover from incidents quickly.
What are some of the main challenges that you're solving, and have those changed in the last 18 months?
I'd say the main challenge people face today is a skills gap with Kubernetes. Everyone wants to use Kubernetes, but the amount of people that can operate those platforms is really difficult. And then getting visibility into the apps that's running in those environments is also a huge challenge. So with Sysdig, we provide just an easy way to get your Kubernetes clusters instrumented and then provide strong coverage for threat detection, compliance, and then observability for those environments.
One of the things that we've seen in the last 18 months is a big change in the threat landscape. So I'm very curious to understand how you're helping customers navigate some of the major dynamics that are going on.
Yeah, I'd say the adoption of cloud and the adoption of Kubernetes have changed drastically. I'd say every single week there's a different environment that has a crypto mining container that's spun up in there. Obviously, if the price of Bitcoin and things like that go up, there's more and more people that want to steal your resources for mining. So we're seeing attacks of people pulling public images from Docker Hub onto their clusters. And there's a couple of different ways that will help customers see that. We have default Falco rules that are vetted by the open source community to detect crypto mining. And then we also see a leading indicator of this as some of the metrics we collect for resource abuse and those types of things, where you'll see the CPU spike and then can easily identify some workload that could have been compromised and is now using your resources to mine Bitcoin or some other altcoin.
Give me a picture of a Sysdig customer. Help me understand the challenges they had, why they chose you, and some of the results that they're achieving.
Yeah, I used to say we were very focused on financial services, but now everyone is doing Kubernetes. Really where we get introduced to an organization is they have their 2 or 3 clusters that are now in production, and I'm going through a compliance audit, or it's now a big enough part of my estate that I need to get security for this Kubernetes and cloud environment. And so we come in to really provide kind of the end-to-end tools that you would need for that compliance audit or to meet your internal security guidelines. So they'll usually have us integrated within their dev pipelines so that developers are getting actionable data about what they need to do to make sure their workloads are as secure as possible before they get deployed to production. So that's part of that shift left mindset. And then the second main point is around runtime detection. And that's where we started off by building our open source tool Falco, which is now a CNCF project. And that gives people visibility into the common things like who's accessing my environment, are there any suspicious connections, are my workloads doing what I expected, and those types of things.
Since the threat landscape has changed so much in the last year and a half, as I mentioned, are the conversations you're having with customers changing? Is this something at the C-suite or the board level from a security and a visibility standpoint?
I think containers and Kubernetes and cloud adoption under the big umbrella of digital transformation is definitely a board level objective. And then that starts to trickle down to, okay, we're taking this app from my on-prem data center, it's now in the cloud, and it has to meet the 20 security mandates I've been meeting for the last 15 years. What am I going to do? And so definitely there's practitioners that are coming in and picking tools for different environments, but I would definitely say that cloud adoption and Kubernetes adoption are something that everyone is trying to accelerate as quickly as possible.
We've seen a lot of acceleration of cloud adoption in the last 18 months, you're right. Now, something that I want to get into with you is the recent executive order, the White House getting involved. How is this changing the cybersecurity discussion across industries?
I really like how they kind of brought better awareness to some of the cybersecurity best practices. It's aligned with a lot of the NIST guidance that's come out before, but now cloud providers are picking this up. Private sector, public sector are all looking at this as kind of a new set of standards that we need to pay attention to. So the fact that they call out things like unauthorized access, you can look at that with Kubernetes audit logs, CloudTrail, a bunch of different things. And then the other term that I think you're going to hear a lot of, at least within the federal community and the tech community over the next year, is this thing called an SBOM, which is a software bill of materials. And it's basically saying, as I'm delivering software to some end user, how can I keep track of everything that's in it? A lot of this probably came out of SolarWinds, where now you need to have a better view of what are all the different components, how are those being tracked over time, what's the life cycle of that. And so the fact that things like SBOMs are being explicitly called out is definitely going to raise a lot of the best practices as organizations move. And then the last point, money always talks. So when you see AWS, Azure, Google all saying, we're putting $10 billion plus behind this for training and tooling and building more secure software, that's going to raise the cybersecurity industry as a whole. And so it's definitely driving a lot of investment and growth in the market.
It's validation, absolutely. Talk to me about some of the leading edges that you're seeing in private sector versus public sector, of folks and organizations who are going, all right, we've got to change, we've got to adopt some of these mandates because the landscape is changing dramatically.
I think Kubernetes adoption goes hand in hand with that, where it's a declarative system. So the way you define your infrastructure in source code repos is the same way that runs in production. So things like auditing are much easier, being able to control what's in your environment. And then containers, it's much easier to package it once and then deploy it wherever you want. So container adoption really makes it easier to be more secure. It's a little tricky where normally like you move to something that's bleeding edge and a lot of things become much harder. And there's operational parts that are hard about Kubernetes, but from a pure security perspective, the apps are meant to do one thing. It should be easy to profile them. And so definitely, I think the adoption of more modern technology and things like cloud services and Kubernetes is a way to be more secure as you move into these environments.
Right, I imagine a way to be more secure and faster as well. I want to dig in now to the Sysdig AWS partnership. Talk to me about that. What do you guys do together?
AWS is a great partner. We as a company wouldn't be able to deliver our software without AWS. So we run our SaaS services on Amazon. We're in multiple regions around the globe, so we can deliver that to people in Europe and meet all the GDPR requirements and those kinds of things. So from a vendor partnership perspective, it's great there. And then on a co-development side, we've had a lot of success and a fun time working with the Fargate team. Fargate is a service on Amazon that makes it easier for you to run your containers without worrying about the underlying compute. And so they faced the challenge about a year and a half ago where customers didn't want to deploy onto Fargate because they couldn't do deeper detection and incident response. So we worked together to figure out different hooks that Amazon could provide to open source tools like Falco or commercial products like Sysdig. So then customers could meet those incident response needs and those detection needs for Fargate. And really, we're seeing more and more Fargate adoption as kind of more and more companies are moving to the cloud and you don't want to worry about managing infrastructure. A service like Fargate is a great place to get started there.
Talk to me a little bit about your joint go-to-market. Is there a joint go-to-market, I should say?
Yeah, we sell through the AWS marketplace. So customers can procure Sysdig software directly through AWS. It'll end up on your AWS bill. You can kind of take some of your committed spend and draw it down there. So that's a great way. And then we also work closely with different solutions architects teams or people who are more boots on the ground with different AWS customers trying to solve those problems like PCI compliance in Fargate or just building a detection and response strategy for EKS and those types of things.
Let's kind of shift gears now and talk about the role of open source in security. What is Sysdig's perspective?
Yeah, so the platform, open source as a platform is something that is driving more and more adoption these days. So if you look at like the fundamental platform like Kubernetes, it has a lot of security capabilities baked in. There's admission controllers, there's network policies. And so you used to buy a firewall or something like that, but with Kubernetes, you can enforce service-to-service communication. You put a service mesh on top of that, and you can almost pretend it's a WAF sometimes. So open source is building a lot of fundamental platform level security in by default. And then the second thing is we're also seeing a rise of just open source tools that traditionally had always come from commercial products. So there's things like OPA, which handle authorization, which is becoming a standard. And then there's also projects like Falco that provide an easy way for people to do IDS use cases and auditing use cases in these environments.
Last question for you. Talk to me about some of the things that you're most excited about that's coming down. Here we are at, this is our Q3 AWS Startup Showcase, but what are some of the things that you're most excited about in terms of being able to help customers resolve some of those challenges even faster?
I think there's more and more Kubernetes standardization that's going on. So a couple weeks ago, Amazon released EKS Anywhere, which allows companies who still have an on-prem footprint to run Kubernetes locally the same way that they would run it in the cloud. That's only going to increase cloud adoption because once you get used to just doing something that matches the cloud, the next question you're going to answer is, okay, how fast can I move that to the cloud? So that's something I'm definitely really excited about. And then also the AWS is putting a lot of investment behind tools like Security Hub. And we're doing a lot of native integrations where we can publish different findings and events into Security Hub so that different practitioners who are used to working in the AWS console can remediate those quickly without ever kind of leaving that native AWS ecosystem. And that's a trend I expect to see more and more of over time as well.
So a lot of co-innovation coming up with AWS. Where can folks go to learn more information? Is there a specific call to action that you'd like to point them to?
The Sysdig blog is one of the best sources that I can recommend. We have a great mixture of like technical practitioner content, some just 101 level. I'm starting with container security. What do I need to know? So I'd say we do a good job of touching the different areas. And then really the best way to learn about anything is to get hands-on. We have a SaaS trial. Most other security vendors have something behind a paywall. You can come in, get started with us for free, and start uncovering what's actually running in your infrastructure.
Knox, let's talk about the secure DevOps movement. As we see that DevOps is becoming more and more common, how is it changing the role of security?
Yeah, so a lot of traditional security requirements are now getting baked into what a DevOps team does day to day. So the DevOps team is doing things like implementing IAC. So your infrastructure as code, and no changes are manually made to environments anymore. It's all done by a Terraform file, a CloudFormation, some code that's representing what your infrastructure looks at. And so now security teams, these DevOps teams have to bake security into that process. So they're scanning their IAC, making sure there's not elevated privileges, it's not doing something it shouldn't. DevOps teams also traditionally now are managing your CI/CD pipeline. And so that's where they're integrating scanning tools in as well to go in and give actionable feedback to the developers around things like, if there's a critical vulnerability with a fix, I'm not going to push that to my registry so it can be deployed to production. That's something a developer needs to go in and change. So really a lot of these kind of actions in the day-to-day work is driven by corporate security requirements, but then DevOps has the freedom to go in and implement it however they want. And this is where Sysdig adds a lot of value because we provide both monitoring and security capabilities through a single platform, so that DevOps teams can go into one product, see what they need for capacity planning, chargebacks, health monitoring, and then in the same interface, go in and see, okay, is that Kubernetes cluster meeting my SOC 2 controls? How many images have my developers submitted to be scanned over the past day? And all those kind of things without needing to learn how to use 4 or 5 different tools.
It sounds to me like a cultural shift almost in terms of the DevOps, the developers working with security. How does Sysdig help with that if that's a cultural shift?
Yeah, it's definitely a cultural shift. I see some people in the community getting angry when they see, oh, we're hiring for a head of DevOps. They're like, DevOps is a movement, not a person. So would totally agree with that there. I think the way we help is if you're troubleshooting an issue, if you're trying to uncover what's in your environment and you are comparing results across 5 different products, it always turns into kind of a point the finger, blame game. There's a bunch of confusion. And so I think how we help that cultural shift is by bringing different teams and different use cases together and doing that through a common lens of data, user workflows, integrations, and those types of things.
Excellent. Knox, thank you for joining me on the program today, sharing with us Sysdig, what you do, your partnership with AWS, and how customers can get started. We appreciate your information.
Thank you.
For Knox Anderson, I'm Lisa Martin. You're watching theCUBE.